Hello and welcome to the next edition of the HP Discover podcast series. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host and moderator for this ongoing discussion on IT innovation and how it's making an impact on people's lives. Our next big data case study discussion examines how mobile app advertising platform Tapjoy handles fast and massive data, some 24 terabytes per day, with just 2 part-time database administrators. We'll learn how Tapjoy's data-driven business of serving 500 million global mobile users, more than 1.5 million ad engagements per day, a data volume of 120 terabytes, runs on HP Vertica. We'll learn more about how high scale and complexity meets minimal labor for building user and advertiser loyalty with our guest here with me. We're joined by David Abercrombie. He's Principal Data Analytics Engineer at Tapjoy in San Francisco. Welcome, David.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Delighted to have you with us. So mobile advertising has really been a major growth area, perhaps more than any other type of advertising. We hear a lot about advertising waning, but not mobile app advertising. How does Tapjoy and its platform help contribute to the success of what we're seeing in the mobile app ad space?
Well, the key to Tapjoy's success is engaging the users and rewarding them for engaging with an ad. So our advertising model is you engage with an ad and then you get typically some sort of reward, virtual currency in the game you're playing or some sort of discount of some sort. And so we actually have the kind of ads that users will seek us out to engage with the ads, to get their rewards.
So this is quite a bit different than a static presented ad. This is something that has a two-way street, maybe multiple directions of information coming and going. Why the analysis? Why is that so important, and why the speed of analysis?
Well, Tapjoy, you can think we have basically 3 types of customers. We have the app publishers who want to monetize and get money from displaying ads. We have the advertisers who need to get their message out and pay for that. And then, of course, we have the users who want to engage with the ads and get their rewards. So the key to Tapjoy's success is being able to balance the needs of all of these disparate uses. So we can't charge the advertisers too much for their ads, even though the monetizers would like that. So it's a delicate balancing act, and that can only be done through big data analysis, careful optimization, and careful monitoring of the ad network as it's in operation.
Before we learn more about the analytics, tell us a bit more about what role Tapjoy plays specifically in what looks like an ecosystem play for placing and evaluating and monetizing app ads. What is it specifically that you do in this bigger app ad function?
Well, specifically what Tapjoy does is enable this rewarded ad engagement model so that the advertisers know that people are going to be paying attention to their ads, and so that the publishers know that the ads we're displaying are compatible with their app and are not going to produce a jarring experience. We want everybody to be happy, the publishers, the advertisers, and the user. And so that's a delicate compromise that's Tapjoy's strength.
And when you get an end user to do something, to take an action, that's very powerful, not only because you're getting them to do what you wanted, but you can evaluate what they did, under what circumstances, and so forth. So tell us a little bit about the model of the end user specifically. What is it about engaging with them that then, of course, leads to the data, which we'll get to in a moment?
Well, our model of the user, we talk about long-term value. So even though it may be a new user who's just started with us, maybe their first engagement, we like to look at them in terms of their long-term value, both to the publishers and the advertiser. So we don't want people who are just engaging with the ad and going away and getting what they want and not really caring about it, but rather we want good users who will continue their engagement and continue this process. And so, once again, that takes some fairly sophisticated machine learning algorithms, very powerful inference, to be able to assess the long-term value. As an example, we have app publishers who are also advertisers. And so they're advertising their app within our platform. And for them, the conversion event, what they're looking for is a download. And what we're trying to do is to offer them users who will not only download the game once to get that initial payoff reward, but will value the download and continue to use it again and again. So all of our models are designed with that end in mind, to look at the long-term value of the user, not just the immediate conversion at this instant in time.
So perhaps it's a bit of a misnomer to talk about ads in apps. We're really talking about a value add function in the app itself.
Oh, right, because the people who are advertising, they don't want just people to see their ads. They want people to follow up with whatever it is they're advertising. If it's another app, they want good users for whom that app is relevant and useful. And so that's really the way we look at it. That's the way to enhance the overall experience in the long term. We're not just in it for the short term. We're looking at developing a good, solid user base, a good set of users who engage thoroughly.
And as I said in my setup, there's nothing hotter in all of advertising than mobile apps and how to do this right. It's early innings, but clearly the stakes are very high.
Oh, and it's a tough business. There's people are saturated. Many people don't want ads. Some of the business models are difficult to master. So for instance, there may be a sequence of multiple ad units. Like for instance, there may be a video followed by another ad to download something, and so that becomes a very tricky thing to balance the financing here. If it was just a simple pass-through and we take a cut, that would be trivial. But that doesn't work in today's market. There's more sophisticated approaches, which does involve business risk. If we reward the user based on that they're watching the video, but then they don't download the app, then we don't get money. And so we have to very carefully look at the complexity of the whole interaction to make it as smooth and rewarding as possible so that the thing works. And that's difficult to do.
Sure. So we're in a dynamic, fast-growing, fairly fresh new industry. Knowing what's going to happen before it happens is always fun in almost any industry, but in this case, it seems with those stakes high to make that monetization happen, it's particularly important. So tell me now about gathering such large amounts of data and then being able to work with it, and then perhaps allowing analysis to happen very swiftly. How do you go about making that possible?
Yeah, so our data architecture is relatively standard for this type of clickstream operation. There's some data that can be put directly into a transactional database in real time, but typically that's only when you get to the very bottom of the funnel, the conversion stuff. But all that clickstream stuff gets written as JSON formatted log files, gets swept up by a queuing system, and then put into our data systems. Our legacy system involved homegrown queuing system, dumping data into HDFS, and from there we would extract and load CSVs into Vertica. As with so many other organizations, we're moving to more real-time operations. So our queuing system has evolved from a couple of different homegrown applications to now we're implementing Kafka. We use Spark as part of our infrastructure, as sort of a hub, if you will, where data is then farmed out to other systems, including real-time in-memory SQL database, which is fairly new to us this year. And then we're still putting data in HDFS, and that's where the machine learning occurs. And from there, we're bringing it into Vertica. In our Vertica cluster, it has two main purposes. There's the operational data store, which has the raw flat tables that are one row for every event with the millisecond timestamps and the IDs of all the different entities involved. And from that operational data store, we do a pure SQL ETL extract into kind of an old school star schema within Vertica in the same database. So our BI ETL is pure SQL and goes into a full-fledged, actually it's a snowflake schema, moderately denormalized, with all the old school bells and whistles, the type 1, type 2, slowly changing dimensions. With Vertica, we're able to denormalize that data warehouse to a large degree. Sitting on top of that, we have a BI tool. We use MicroStrategy, for which we have defined our various metrics and our various attributes. And it's very adept at knowing exactly which fact table and which dimensions to join. So we have sort of a hybrid architecture. I would say that we have all the way from real-time in-memory SQL. We have Hadoop and all of its machine learning and our algorithmic pipelines. And then we have kind of the old school data warehouse with the operational data store and the star schema.
So a complex, innovative, custom architectural approach to this, and yet I'm astonished that you're running your Vertica and you're using Vertica in multiple ways with 2 part-time DBAs. So how is it possible that you had minimal labor given this topology that you just described?
Well, we found Vertica very easy to manage. It's been very well behaved, very well stable. For instance, we don't even really use the management console because there's not enough to manage. Our cluster is about 120 terabytes. It's only on 8 nodes, and it's pretty much trouble-free. So one of the part-time DBAs deals with kind of more operating system level stuff, patches, cluster recovery, those sorts of issues. And the other part-time DBA, me, deals more with data structure design, SQL tuning, and that level of and Vertica training for our staff. Almost all, we probably have, in terms of ad hoc users into our Vertica database, well over 100. Just people running who have the ability to run any query they want at any time into the Vertica database. We had, when we first started out, we tried running Vertica in EC2. Now, mind you, this was 4 or 5 years ago. Amazon EC2 was not where it is today. It failed. It was very difficult to manage. There were perplexing problems that we couldn't solve. So we moved our Vertica and essentially all of our big data systems out of the cloud onto dedicated hardware where they're much easier to manage and much easier to bring the proper resources. Then at one time in our history, when we built a dedicated hardware cluster for Vertica, we failed to heed properly the hardware planning guide and did not provision enough disk I/O bandwidth. In those situations, Vertica is unstable, and we had a lot of problems. But once we got the proper disk I/O, it's been smooth sailing. I can't even remember the last time we even had a node drop out. It's been rock solid. I was able to go on vacation for 3 weeks recently and know that there would be no problem, and there was no problem. So
the ultimate KPI. I was able to go on vacation.
Exactly. So, and with the proper hardware design, Vertica is fairly resilient against out-of-control queries. There was a time when half my time was spent monitoring for slow queries. But again, with the proper hardware, smooth sailing, I don't even bother with that stuff anymore. Our MicroStrategy BI tool writes very good SQL. Part of the key to our success with this BI portion is designing the Vertica schema and the MicroStrategy metadata layer to take advantage of each other's strengths and avoid each other's weaknesses. So that really was key to the stable exceptional performance we get. I basically get no complaints of slow queries from my BI tool. It doesn't, no problem.
Right kind of problem to have.
Yes.
Okay. Now that we've heard quite a bit about how you're doing this, I'd like to learn, if I could, about some of the paybacks when you do this properly, when it is running well, in terms of SQL queries, ETL load times reduction, the ability for you to monetize and help your customers create better advertising programs that are acceptable and popular. So what are the paybacks technically and then in business terms?
Okay. Well, in order to get those paybacks, a key element was confidence in the data, the results that we were shipping out. And the only way to get that confidence was by having highly accurate data and extensive QC in the ETL. What that also means is that as a product is under development and when it's not ready yet, the instrumentation isn't ready, that stuff doesn't make it into our BI tool. You can only get that stuff from ad hoc. So the benefit has been a very clear understanding of the day-to-day operations of our ad network, both for our internal monitoring to know when things are behaving properly, when the instrumentation is working as expected, when the queues are running, but also for our customers because of the flexibility that we can do from a traditional BI system with 500 metrics over a couple dozen dimensions. Our customers, the app publishers and the advertisers, get incredible detail, customized exactly the way they need for ingestion into their systems or to help them understand how Tapjoy is serving them. So. And again, that comes from confidence in the data.
Well, great. When you've got more data and better analytics, you can create better products. Where might we look next to where you take this? Is there any, I don't expect you to pre-announce or anything, but I mean, where can you now take these capabilities as a business and maybe even expand into other activities on a mobile endpoint?
Yeah. Well, as we expand our business and move into new areas, what we really need is flexibility in our algorithms and the way we deal with some of our real-time decision making. So one area that's new to us this year is the in-memory SQL database like MemSQL. So some of our old real-time ad optimization was based on pre-calculating data and serving it up through HBase key value. But now, where we can do real-time aggregation queries using SQL that is easy to understand, easy to modify, very expressive and very transparent, it gives us more flexibility in terms of fine-tuning our real-time decision-making algorithms, which is absolutely necessary because, as an example, we acquired a company in Korea called 5 Rocks that does app tech and that tracks the users within the app, like what level they're on or what activities they're doing or what they enjoy, with an eye towards in-app purchase optimization. And so we're blending the in-app purchase optimization along with traditional ad network optimization, and the two have different rules and different constraints. And so we really need the flexibility and expressiveness of our real-time decision-making systems.
Great. One last question. You mentioned machine learning earlier. Do you see that becoming more prominent in what you do and how you're working with data scientists, and how might that expand in terms of where you employ it?
Absolutely. Well, Tapjoy started with machine learning. Our data scientist, our machine learning, our predictive algorithm team is about 6 times larger than our traditional Vertica BI team. So mostly what we do at Tapjoy is, predictive analytics, various machine learning things. So we wouldn't be alive without it, and we expand it. We're not shifting in one direction or another. It's apples and oranges, and there's a place for both.
Excellent. Well, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there. We've been examining how mobile app advertising platform Tapjoy handles fast and massive data flows with just 2 part-time database administrators. And we've learned how Tapjoy's data-driven business of serving 500 million global mobile users, more than 1.5 million ad engagements per day, runs on HP Vertica. So please join me in thanking our guest. We've been here with David Abercrombie, Principal Data Analytics Engineer, at Tapjoy in San Francisco. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank our audience as well for joining us for this big data innovation case study discussion. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host for this ongoing series of HP-sponsored discussions. Thanks again for listening in. Come back next time.